Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is For Lovers Only, issue number 80, dated October 1975. This is definitely one of the more memorable romantic comics I've read, although not necessarily in a good way. There is definitely a direct inverse between the quality of the story and the quality of the art. I will have to say that for at least two of these three stories, the art is amazing. I have nothing but the highest praise in terms of the quality of the art. But the quality of the stories is, oh boy. The first one is really anti-women's lib. The last story, the protagonist is a complete scumbag, along with the point of view of whoever wrote it. The second story was pretty decent. We see a cover here. It's very well drawn here. It's a summer image, which makes sense given that it would be out on the newsstands at that time. And I'm going to go right into the first story. And the first story is called Love Above All. And our protagonists are Sheila and Lou. And Lou is a complete dickhead, no matter how well drawn he is. So anyway, we see a young couple. We see Lou, who looks very much, I guess, kind of like David Cassidy at the time. He definitely has that kind of blown out hair helmet style, maybe a little like Warren Beatty in Shampoo here. We see the young woman. She's equally as beautifully drawn. Kind of gives off Heather Graham vibes here in a good way. So anyway, this young couple, they're very much in love, and they're embracing, and they're very stylish, probably New York apartment. And the two are kissing, and she's declaring her devoted love to him. He already did that earlier. So anyway, the two are walking in the park. It looks like they're enjoying kind of like, that stereotypical September day in New York. And what's going on is that Lou is asking whether anything special is currently happening with Sheila. And she mentions, privacy. Okay, yeah, so I guess they're going to make out in the park. As beautifully drawn as this page is, I don't understand what's going on narratively. So then it turns out that the two are at a discotheque. They're really enjoying life. They're taking over. Apparently Sheila has gotten a new job, and she's working at a computer center. So this is sort of the first introduction to what would be the commonplace office, in 2024. But it was kind of new, and actually there were a lot of female computer programmers. In fact, the profession, the field, I should say, was actually equally split. For much of the 70s, it was really during the Reagan administration that there was this huge change where a lot of women were sort of being discouraged to get into that field, and that's when men started dominating the computer field. But no, going in the 70s, you're just as bound to find a woman doing the programming as a man. Interesting enough, there was a famous adult film actress, Vanessa Del Rio. Before she got into adult films, she actually was working as a programmer in an office building. So anyway, we see Sheila. She's upset. She's quite happy with her new job. She'll be upset later on. And then it turns out we go to the next day. Sheila is getting the tour of the office. The office is incredibly stylish. So again, this is sort of this imagined area where I think they kind of had a late 90s, early 2000s mentality where, where working for a tech company was like being a part of a family. And there was going to be a lot more freedom, and they were going to break some of the conventions that was known about office work that you would see in films like The Apartment, or you would see in TV shows like Mad Men. And it almost looks like what you would expect to see from a fashion magazine, the way the two women here, Sheila and one of her direct bosses, Anna, are both dressed, along with the interiors. Anna is pointing out that Sheila's boss, her direct boss, will be a guy called Mr. Kovac, and that Anna is the assistant to Mr. Kovac. So basically, Sheila would be answering to either him directly or Anna. And Anna is actually pointing out here that she actually has more experience, she has more training, and she has more expertise in the computer field than her boss. So it's kind of implying that the glass ceiling for women is kind of firmly in place there. Mr. Kovac, he's kind of a young, I guess you call hip dude, but he's also very businesslike, and he's kind of a little rude. So while he's looking at this paper, probably printed up using a dot matrix printer, he's very curt with Sheila, making it clear that he's the boss, you're the subordinate, and you are serving my wishes. So he sort of has that kind of authoritarian asshole demeanor to him. Sheila is, first day on the job, she's being compliant. She needs this job. So she just simply says yes. However, it turns out during the coffee break, Anna had overheard this conversation. And she calls Mr. Kovac a conceited ape. And that Sheila, and she advises Sheila that Sheila should have stood up to him and not let him, kind of just run ragged across her. Sheila's taken the position that he's the boss and the boss is the boss, and I have to do what he says, don't I? And then Anna is saying, well, maybe not necessarily. And that Anna's a part of a group that's looking to change that part of the corporate culture in this enterprise. And she's saying that this in our group, we meet up during lunchtime, and we have our little meetings, and why don't you join us in the next meeting? So then the next day, I think, during lunch hour, Sheila shows up, and there's Anna, and there's 7 other employees. It looks like, actually it was 8 other employees, so there's like 9 girls altogether. And they're sort of in the lunchroom, but they're also apart from the others. This way they can have their little meeting in semi-privacy. And what Anna is telling the others is that she found out about the payroll figures for the company, and that women make 53% less than their male counterparts. Between men and women, the gender gap with salaries today. But back then there was a real gap. And these numbers sound right. Yeah, probably the women were doing most of the work, but they were getting pretty much like maybe half the pay. And Anna is pointing out this, saying that basically the reason why our salaries are so low is because the guys are paying themselves so much. And that we're the ones with the expertise, the company needs us, and we should consider going out on strike so we can get equal treatment with our male colleagues. That sounds like the right thing to do. Anna is bolstering the other women, saying that, listen, if it weren't for us women, this company would go out of business, and it's probably true. It also turns out that Anna, according to the narrative of the story, is indoctrinating Sheila. So apparently, Anna has also other vocal opinions about men. Anna is saying that women are pursued by men. Men select, women must wait passively. Men decide if they want marriage or they simply want a short affair. We're just pawns in a game. So Anna is sort of taking a very realistic and very cynical view about men. And she's sharing these philosophies with Sheila. However, she's still with Lou. I think only a few days have passed. And Lou announces that he wants to marry Sheila. And, Sheila is asking correctly, hey, what about my job? Because, marriage is a huge commitment and you have to agree on certain things. So anyway, before I get back to the story, we'll take a look at this one ad. It's for tampons. Again, you would not see this in the regular superhero comics, but again, the girls of this age would need to know about these products. And I'm sure there was pushback from parents who were like, listen, I don't need a comic book for, to teach my daughter this stuff. But, hey, they need to know this. They're talking about how uncomfortable napkins are during a period. This is something I have no direct experience with. I remember one girlfriend who, when she would go through her periods, she was a nightmare. Although I'm sure she had good reasons because it looked like she was miserable. And they're talking about this particular tampon that is very lightweight, very small, doesn't need a bulky applicator. It almost sounds like you're talking about a vibrator. So anyway, this is the big selling point, that this very small tampon is also easy to insert, and you can carry it anywhere in case you're having issues. And this causes the young woman to ski better, to enjoy her vacation more. So yeah, those are very practical reasons to have this. So we go back to the story. It turns out that Lou wants Sheila to quit her job. And the women's liberation movement totally passed Lou by. He's saying, listen, I'm the man, I'm the breadwinner. You're the one who has to stay at home. But it's going to be great. It's going to be great because, I'm going to earn more money because I'm set up for a promotion. And it's not a big deal. And Sheila points out correctly that, hey, you're making this sacrifice for me. How would you like if I foisted this sacrifice on you? Rather than acknowledging this actually fair point, Lou calls Sheila an idiot and saying, how dare you suggest that me, a man, would not be able to keep up with his commitments? Because as we know, women who have to deal with men with child support, those guys are never late with their checks. And alimony is always there on the dot. So anyway, Sheila's pointing out that you're basically foisting a whole lot of work on me with no compensation. Because if you expect me to quit my job when we get married, you're expecting me to clean this house, whatever house we're going to live in. And if we have kids, I'm the one who's going to have to change those shitty diapers, not you. And Sheila's saying, listen, this doesn't sound like much fun. However, Lou thinks it's just a framing issue. That, yes, it sounds bad the way you're saying it, but if you look at it from this point of view, may not necessarily be that bad. So that's what Lou is kind of saying. And he's also saying that Sheila's very unfair. Apparently, bringing up these practical and realistic concerns is unfair to Lou. And then Lou says that he's going to, quote, I withdraw the offer. And he says goodbye to Sheila. So immediately, like that, and then as Lou is leaving the door, he slams the door and he yells at her, have a lovely career. And Sheila's upset about this situation. I'm sure any woman would. I don't think she's upset about it for the right reasons. She should be upset because, this guy was acting like an asshole. But she's actually upset because, this might endanger her marriage plans to Lou. And again, I have to say, this is beautifully drawn artwork. It's just the terrible point of view of the story. So anyway, Sheila is talking to her mom. Mom she has that Gelf look. She looks a little like Jane Curtin. So anyway, Sheila's telling her mom about the argument they had. The mom's calling it a quarrel. Sheila's saying, listen, this quarrel started because I asserted myself as a person. I made it clear that I'm not going to be unpaid labor, which is slavery, the way I see it. And she's standing up for herself as a person. And she's expecting kind of some support from mom, and mom gives her none. And then Sheila talks about how, quote, he thinks his career is more important than mine. He thinks my role will be to serve him. Well, he's wrong, quote. This is the answer Sheila gets back from the mom. Quote, I don't know who you've been talking to, Sheila, but whoever she is, I bet she doesn't have a boyfriend like Lou. So the whole gist is that, these newfangled ideas of you thinking of yourself as an individual, who's putting these ideas into your head? And I bet you it's one of those bitter harpies who doesn't have a man like Lou. The Lou that wants you to be so unhappy. So anyway, so basically the mom's dumping a guilt trip on the daughter, but the daughter is still standing by her guns, and she's continuing to go to these meetings in the lunchroom that Anna is holding court with. And during this meeting, it turns out that Mr. Kovacs needs Sheila to assist on a project. And there's kind of a back and forth here, because Anna doesn't want Sheila to go. Anna is saying, listen, Sheila, you're on your coffee break. You are entitled to this time, for yourself. You don't have to work on the clock for this clod. And Sheila gives in to Mr. Kovacs, saying it might be important. He normally wouldn't bother me, so I kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then, the story kind of falls apart here narratively a little, because then Sheila asks a philosophical question to one of her co-workers. She says, are you engaged or anything, Marge? And Marge says, are you insane? There isn't a man in the world I'd spit on. So basically Marge is saying that, she's just a lonely woman, without a man. So anyway, Marge is bringing up that they're going to decide what day to strike, because apparently the strike is still on. But it turns out that Anna, who is the leader of this group, she's not going to be attending that meeting, because she'll be having lunch with Mr. Kovacs. And she asked Sheila if she can borrow her perfume. And then Anna kind of fesses up a little, saying that that Kovacs is actually in love with her, and he's been mad about her for a year, and he wasn't sure that Anna was interested, but once Anna, once he expressed his feelings to Anna, all her defenses went down. She was like, I have a man. So it shows here that the point of view is that, these women livers, they're just bitter, angry harpies who don't have a man. And once they have a man in their life, they stop being bitter. So all their complaints about pay and equal treatment, that's just bullshit. They just need a good rod in them. So anyway, Sheila's at her desk. She's very depressed. She feels that she's an idiot because she listened to Anna, and Anna was telling her, "Listen, you should act like an adult with some agency." However, Sheila is thinking that, hey, I just should have accepted Lou's offer to basically be his legal slave. And she calls Lou back saying that she was the idiot and that she was misbehaving, and that Lou, can you please find it in your heart to take me back? And then basically Sheila becomes like a fundamentalist Mormon here, because she's saying, listen, I'll give you everything. I'll give up everything for you. Hey, you want a second, third, fourth wife? I'm cool with that. And basically is completely submitting. Meanwhile, the mom is looking at this, basically her daughter submitting to herself, to this guy as if it was 1853. And the mom says, she isn't as stupid as I thought. She's kind of stupid, because remember, she is a girl, but not as stupid as to turn down a wonderful guy like Lou. And that's the end of the story. I hope this couple doesn't make it. I hope Sheila comes to her senses before there's like any marriage. And if nothing else, I kind of hope nature will intervene and kind of rid us of Lou. But I do have to say, it is a beautifully drawn story. Okay, excuse me. The next story is Runaway. And I can tell immediately that this is drawn by Capella. It looks a little bit like a rush job. This looks like Capella. He worked with Jack Davis, because there's kind of a parody look to this. But nevertheless, I did enjoy the art. There were a lot of pages I enjoyed. Whatever flaws they are in the technique, I think the spirit and the heart more than makes up for it. Okay, so we got our story. We have two guys. One is Chad, one is Phil, and the female protagonist is Melissa. Melissa is a good girl. Melissa is a good girl through and through. She wants to please her daddy. However, daddy is very overbearing and controlling. So the issues that are confronted here really are not caused by Melissa, I should say. It's really caused by this dad who's just doesn't want to see his daughter happy. So anyway, the daughter Melissa, is at the door because she still lives at home with mommy and daddy. She's with her boyfriend Chad. The two were kind of embracing, kind of kissing for goodnight. He wasn't planning on doing anything more other than that. However, the father, he opens the front door saying, hey, what are you doing with my 20-year-old, legal adult daughter? Then Chad and the father, they get into it. The father's being really hot-headed, tells Melissa to shut up, and that whatever excuse you're trying to give me is lame. And the father says that, And the father kind of looks like the guy from that '70s show, the very early years, who was married to Tanya Roberts. That's who this guy looks like. So anyway, the father kind of looks like Richard Nixon with the afro. He tells Chad that he's not welcome in his home. He never wants to see him again. Melissa is then arguing with her father, Richard Nixon, saying, how could you do this? Chad's one of the nicest men I've ever known. I love him. And, Richard is just saying, listen, I know everything I know about that creep. I've bugged his place, and yeah, I've heard those tapes. And the father's saying that Chad has always been kind of a wild child, and that he hangs out with, the bad element in town. Melissa's saying that Chad isn't like that anymore, and there's no evidence of it based on this drawing here. So anyway, it turns out that both parents have heard gossip about Chad. The gossip has been negative. So they kind of don't want Melissa to be hanging around Chad. And because, Melissa is a good girl, and because the parents are very controlling, they're sort of like hindering this relationship from growing. It turns out that all three of them are going to go on a vacation to the Caribbean. So I think the parents are kind of hoping, in addition to planning this trip for a long time, it came at a good time, where they're hoping maybe some distance and some time away from Chad will kind of make her forget about him. So anyway, she's upset. She's pointing out that, she is an adult, but at the same time, they're basically treating her like she's 13 years old. They're flying to the Caribbean a couple days later. And Melissa's thinking to herself that she did call Chad before leaving, and he feels awful about what happened. So Melissa is talking to her dad on the plane, saying that, listen, we need to get you away from that Chad creep. And Melissa's saying, listen, Dad, you're not wrong about him. No. She's saying the opposite. She's saying, Dad, you're wrong about him. That he's a good guy now. So then we see Melissa. She's on the beach. These are some nicely drawn panels. Kind of has that Liechtenstein feel. I know probably Liechtenstein stole or swiped from this artist. But anyway, Melissa's on the beach. She's trying to enjoy herself. She looks great. But nevertheless, her thoughts are with Chad. And she also dislikes sort of the controlling environment that her parents have set up for her. So she's kind of like, looking to escape that. And she kind of acts out a little, is that she decides that she's going to swim past the point where it's safe for swimmers to go. So she's sort of, she's kind of like breaking this rule here. It turns out she's a very good swimmer, although you still have to be careful about those riptides. But nevertheless, she encounters the lifeguard, who by the way, was kind of creeping on her a little earlier from his chair. He wasn't watching the ocean or the swimmers. He was watching Melissa here. And Melissa points out that she recognizes him as the hotel lifeguard, saying, well, what are you doing here? Why are you creeping on me in front of me? And it turns out that Phil mentions that she did break a rule here. So even though Melissa really wasn't aware of the limit, and she did that. So Phil is escorting Melissa back into the safety area, and the two are talking, and it looks like they're getting along very well. Melissa's sharing a little bit here with Phil, saying that basically, I was brought here somewhat against my will. My good girl genes just couldn't say no. but my parents are very controlling, and they kind of treat me like a child. And it turns out that Phil had the same problem with his parents, where his parents were sort of slow to cut that umbilical cord. And that part of the reason why he's working in the Caribbean. I should mention that Phil, blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin, making a point, this guy is very white and thus socially acceptable to the readers, that he got a job in this hotel. And also there was a lot of pressure for him to join the family business. So they're pointing out that Phil is a guy with some means. Now, before I go to the story, take a look at this one ad. It's a place called Jerry of Hollywood, and it looks like they sell photographs and pictures of famous stars at the time. You see like Elvis, a lot of Elvis, Robert Redford, Barbra Streisand, Bruce Lee. Yeah, these would have been the people. The Beatles still had some weight. Michael Landon. There's a Star Trek one. William Shatner has this weird look on his face here. And then some of the ladies like Raquel Welch and Margaret and Marilyn Monroe. Okay, yeah, you get a bunch of posters, but they seem kind of like smallish in size. So then we go back to the story. So the two are connecting here. And so they're finding comfort with their situations with each other. Apparently what Phil said is resonating with Melissa, saying that she should try to break free of her parents, saying that life is too short, and while they love you, you don't need to be controlled by them for so long. And it turns out Melissa is sort of working on being more independent. And one of the things is that she agreed to go on a tour with Phil. So she's going on this unescorted tour. And apparently this might be such a transgression with the dad that Melissa has to sneak out of the hotel room. And it seems like all three are sharing that room. So they're really keeping an eye on Melissa. And it turns out that Phil is a good tour guide. He knows everybody. Everybody knows him. And Phil suggests something. He says, "Listen, I can arrange to have you get a job here. Now, this is a very impoverished country. There are a lot of people who desperately need work. But we can always make a place for a privileged American." And it looks like Melissa takes him up on this offer. So she starts working at the hotel that hired Phil. We see kind of this Karma Miranda type individual speaking with somewhat broken English, but nevertheless she's very enthusiastic for her new white segregate daughter. It turns out that the father's furious. How dare my 20-year-old daughter behave like an adult? He confronts Melissa. Melissa stands up for herself, saying that, "Listen, I'm kind of an adult now, and I can kind of do what I want." So anyway, Melissa is working at the hotel. She's kind of an assistant to the hostess. And sometimes she's the head hostess during kind of like slow time or hours. Phil's checking in on Melissa. Melissa's like saying, "Hey, I'm doing great. I'm doing fine." She's washing the dishes at the time. And at the same time, she's also updating Phil about some of the drama that's going on in her life, because apparently her mom had wrote her. And she's saying that the father is kind of realizing that maybe he was a little too controlling with her, and that he kind of has some regret over what he did raising her. Phil meanwhile asks Melissa, does she want to go to the dance? And I think this might have been the first date that she's gone on since she left Chad. Because she hasn't given up on Chad. She's actually thinking of Chad at this moment. And the thing is, she likes Phil. She thinks Phil's a nice guy. But the thing is, whenever she thinks of Phil, she sort of thinks of Chad. So she's always comparing Phil to Chad. So that's sort of telling Melissa, that's how she feels, is that she's still carrying this torch for Chad. Because if she's using Chad as the standard for everything she wants in a man, that's telling her, hey, you want Chad. So then it turns out that Chad shows up a week later at the restaurant. And Melissa's on duty. And, hey, he's like, hey, how you doing, Melissa? You got a table for one. And Melissa's initially surprised to see Chad. But then she realized, oh, my mom probably told you where I am. And we see Melissa, very nicely drawn here, saying that, this is not the busy time, a little bit of a lull. So I can kind of sit with you because Melissa has kind of hostess duties. And turns out that Chad wants to be a little more handsier with her. And the two start dancing together. So they're getting reacquainted here. Once again, the restaurant is not busy. Her direct supervisor is off. So she's sort of taken the privilege that, since she's the hostess, she has to make the customers happy. Chad's a customer, so, that's what she's doing. It turns out that one of the things that bothered Melissa was that Chad wasn't trying to communicate with her. And that was giving Melissa the idea that maybe Chad had moved on to someone else. But it turned out that Chad was just being a little prudent, maybe a little overly prudent, in that he wanted the father to cool down. He felt that maybe if he stayed away from Melissa, that would maybe kind of cool down the dad, make him less emotional, and maybe he could try to have a constructive conversation with him. So it looks like Chad had good motives for what he did. He just did a bad job of communicating this with Melissa, because at one point, just before she flew to the Caribbean, she did speak to Chad. So Melissa understands here. There's a nice panel of Melissa, kind of looking a little like Tina Louise here. And the two are walking along the beach. Hold it. Okay, this might be a problem for Melissa because I think she's still on duty at the restaurant. But nevertheless, there's some really nicely drawn images of the sea. The two are basically, they're talking in a very romantic way. And it's an equal exchange. So these two still care for each other. Chad just comes out and says it, I love you, Melissa. Melissa's just relieved to hear this, saying, there's no more uncertainty here. And Melissa is thrilled. And she's saying that, listen, I'm going to work harder on working on my dad to make you accept him, to make him accept you. So Melissa's sort of putting this burden on her shoulders. However, Chad immediately takes off that burden by saying, listen, I already talked to him. And he realized he was wrong, and he came to the conclusion that I did change, and I did show him that I'm not the person that people are gossiping about now. I told him, listen, your fashion style is 10 years behind the times, and so is your information. And so it looks like, Chad squared everything away with the dad. That's enough for a good girl, Melissa, and the two are going to get married. And this couple's definitely going to make it. Melissa handled Phil correctly. She didn't treat Phil like a rebound. She saw him as a prospect, but she also realized that there was still another model out there that she likes, and she's not going to do anything with Phil until she knew her situation with Chad. Chad was very classy. Yeah, he could maybe they could have worked on their communication a little bit more, but yeah, these two are going to make it. Okay, so before I get to the last story, I'm going to take a look at Buck's bag, and this actually is the first of the Buck's bags, because they're making the announcement that the previous doctor who gave advice, he's no longer going to be doing this, but Buck Mason is. So the first letter to Buck is that from a 15-year-old girl. She calls herself once out. It turns out she was dating a 15-year-old boy. She no longer had romantic emotions toward the guy. She wants to break it off. And he's not getting the message. So he's being very clingy and controlling of her. It turns out that people around her are trying to gaslight her, saying that, oh, you should stick it out, it's just a phase, maybe he'll grow on you. So that's very common of the times where they cared more about how the boy felt than the girl felt. But she feels very strongly, and she's willing to stand up to these people, but she doesn't quite know how to do it, and do it in a way that kind of says it's over. And Buck says, basically said, tell the guy it's over. And they mentioned the ring, and one of the things about the ring is that apparently he had given her a ring. And according to him, as long as she's in possession of that ring, she's a possession of him. And Buck is saying, fuck that ring. It may mean that to him, and that's just a bullshit, fig leaf excuse, but you don't have to honor that. However, Buck does say, listen, keep care of the ring, because when he finally does get the message, he's going to want it back. So you're going to want as little confrontation with this guy as possible. So don't take that ring or destroy it or throw it into the river. Just put it to the side and realize that he's going to be coming back, and he's going to foist that ring on some other unfortunate girl. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the next letter. And it turns out that basically there's a girl, and she likes a boy, and it appears that the boy sort of is noticing this, maybe because he'll always find a reason to be close to her. But the thing is, because she's so shy, she's not saying anything to him. So it's sort of this kind of guessing game. And she's worried about, wanting to know whether this boy likes her, because she likes the boy. But she wants to do it in a way which won't be embarrassing to her. Because if this thing goes sideways, she wants to save some face. And Buck is saying, just simply ask him, because you can't assume to believe that maybe he's just as shy as you are. He might not know that you like him, because there are some boys that dense. So just simply kind of talk to him, and kind of break the ice slowly. So he's saying don't necessarily tell him your feelings, kind of feel him out, and that's kind of good advice from Buck. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the last story. The last story is just as horrible as the first story, and it is just as beautifully drawn. The artwork, and I don't know the artist, although it looks like they signed their name Cole. This artist had also done another story for Charleston that dealt with drug addiction and romance, and that's a comic I'm going to definitely talk about. We have our protagonist in this story is Sue and Dennis. And Dennis is an absolute scumbag. And we see here that Sue and Dennis are at a party here. It kind of looks like a pool party, although only a couple of people are in swimsuits. Everyone else is kind of conventionally dressed. It kind of looks like that party in the kind of early scenes of Boogie Nights. So anyway, Sue is talking to her boyfriend Dennis, and Sue is saying, "Listen, I ran into a friend of ours, Ginger. Why don't you go over and talk to Ginger? That really sexy redhead in the bikini. Why don't you spend a little time with her?" So Dennis goes ahead and he kind of says hello to Ginger here. Meanwhile, Sue is taking the opportunity to eat a cupcake. And while Sue is eating this cupcake, she notices how Dennis is looking at Ginger. So on one hand, Sue is the one who made the suggestion that Dennis speak to Ginger. At the same time, she's not necessarily happy with the eyes she's making toward Ginger. And it looks like Ginger is kind of returning it from the art here. And again, just beautifully drawn art. So it turns out Dennis comes back to Sue saying, "Listen, I talked to Ginger. She looks great. She sounds great." And Dennis immediately talks about Sue and her diet. And Sue fesses up that she had one small cupcake, and that's all she had, and that she won't be eating anything else. So this immediately sets the tone for the story where Dennis is just micromanaging Sue's weight and her appearance. And Sue is just simply accepting this. And she's literally having to kind of hide eating food from this guy. So you can see the abusive relationship these two have. Dennis wants assurance from Sue that she won't get fat and that she won't eat anymore and she won't enjoy herself. She'll just be the perfect object for Dennis. Susan goes along with this. Susan is declaring her everlasting love to Dennis, and Dennis is saying, "Listen, I love you too. So stop worrying that I'm not going to love you," because Susan is showing some insecurity issues, but the insecurity issues are stemming from the way Dennis is treating her. So again, he's not getting the point here. So it turns out the two of them had been dating for about 3 years. And we go into flashback where the two met. They met in high school when they were both 17. Dennis asked Susan for a date. She's poolside here. They're both, I guess they have a really nice school pool. I remember going to one public school that did have a swimming pool. But it was just for a summer program. Then we see Dennis and Susan. Susan is enjoying a big, ice cream sundae. She's just having fun. She's just enjoying herself. And, Dennis is kind of pushing her to finish that up. Saying, "Listen, we have to go to the beach. Can you just, eat that thing and then let's, scram. And don't eat all of it." That's sort of the energy that Dennis is giving out. It turns out that Sue is not going to the beach with their friends. And it turns out that she can't fit in the new bathing suit. So as she's eating this chocolate sundae, she promises Dennis that she'll go on a diet tomorrow. Then it turns out that Susan's having trouble gaining weight. She looks absolutely beautiful. And yet, the writer's trying to convince us that this is an overweight person. Turns out that Susan has gained a little bit of weight, so she doesn't feel like she's going in the right direction. And Susan is pointing out how angry Dennis was at the party. And when Dennis caught her eating a one single little snack, and she was really upset about the way he was looking at Ginger. and this is motivating Susan to lose weight. This honestly should motivate Susan to get some therapy to get away from this abusive man. So then it turns out that Dennis decides to put things into his own hands. He doesn't have a talk with Susan saying, listen, I've been overly concerned about your weight. You were a healthy looking woman. You still look great. He doesn't do that. He takes her to Weight Watchers. So basically, and Dennis is basically giving an order to Susan, where, listen, Susan, this is your last chance to lose that weight, fatty, and you better follow the program. And the female employee from Weight Watchers doesn't say anything about this kind of just emotional abuse. Just simply plays it. Listen, if you follow the program, you'll lose weight and you won't be hungry and you won't be a fatty. So not a whole lot of sensitivity there. Dennis is making Susan an ultimatum. She has to lose those 4 pounds or those 7 pounds, or else they're through. Dennis is saying ever since she became, quote, fat, she's been unhappy. And because she's been unhappy, Dennis is like, you're not much fun to be around. So Dennis isn't interested in the fixing the source of her unhappiness or even finding out why she's unhappy. But Dennis is more like, your unhappiness is a downer to me. So right now we can see Dennis is really a narcissistic creep. The two are at a restaurant. Dennis cares more about her plate than his, and Dennis is saying, listen, I've noticed a change in you. You're a little thinner, not much of a cow as you were before. Then it says that in a month, she lost about 22 pounds. If you lose weight that quickly in a month, there's usually something wrong there. But nevertheless, Susan, who is already a beautiful, gorgeous woman, she's getting more male attention. And Dennis is taking this as the type of validation he wants, saying, listen, I see all these guys looking at you and checking you out. That tells me that you aren't a fat cow, that I'm not the only one seeing this, and everyone else is noticing the difference. Susan thinks this is groovy. And then they go to a party. It looks like they're having a little fun. Dennis is taking Sue dancing, kind of dancing her away from the meal table. A couple of guys are leering at Sue. One of them mentions that she was really stacked in high school. And so they're kind of objectifying her. Turns out Susan wants to dance with a guy called Edgar. And Dennis is like okay with it, saying, yeah, enjoy yourself. It's only going to be dancing. And so Susan kind of likes this because Dennis isn't uptight. He isn't berating her about her weight. So again, this is almost like battered spouse syndrome. So then Susan's able to fit into her old bikini. It turns out it looks great on her. Again, the artwork is so good in this issue. So Susan is at the beach and she's talking to a guy called Len. Len kind of looks like a little weasel here, but apparently she knows Len. They're having a soda. They're talking about when they were in school together. Apparently the two had dated when they were in high school. So this is before Dennis got on the scene. And it looks like Len wants to re-sparkle that romance that he had with Sue during grade school. Dennis overhears this. He's saying, listen, guys, she's taken. And the two kind of slug it out here. Again, beautifully drawn artwork here. It looks like it looks like Len. He strikes first. He hits Dennis with a right hook, and then Dennis throws an overhand right, kind of knocks Len down. So then it turns out that that the guy Len, he's kind of crying. He's in the corner crying. He realizes he isn't really the tough guy that he thought he was, and I don't know. They just leave, and then it turns out there are other guys paying attention to Sue. They're not being as forward as Len, but nevertheless, they're up in front and leering at her. She's actually enjoying this attention. She might interpret it as non-abusive attention, the attention that she normally gets from Dennis. So anyway, it turns out that Dennis is having shit fit, and apparently, because Sue is so beautiful, and because she's attracting so much attention from other men, this is bothering insecure Dennis, and he takes it out on Sue. So he's saying, listen, I don't feel like we're we. I feel like, you're drawing all this attention. None of the other guys are looking at me. They're all looking at you. And this might be another issue Dennis has. So Dennis leaves. Sue's like, come on, guy, you're not getting jealous, are you? And, Dennis is trying to deflect. But then he admits, listen, you're a really beautiful woman, and you get a lot of attention. And, I don't want to be the guy who kind of ruins your parade, so to speak. And Sue doesn't understand what Dennis is getting at. And it turns out that Dennis is breaking up with Sue, saying that, listen, I totally made up in my head that all these guys are just gonna swoop in and take you away from me. And that's probably true in that she'll probably find a guy who isn't as abusive as Glenn. So Glenn is kind of telling on himself. Sue is beside herself. She still wants a relationship with this dickhead. And Dennis walks off, pulling a dickhead move. And again, beautifully drawn artwork. Sue is upset. She's talking to her mom. The mom is bringing up the diet, so she's concerned about Sue's weight. There are so many people who are just concerned about Sue's weight. Sue's feeling bad. She feels that she was the one who ruined the relationship with Dennis, that she was the one who, she should not have enjoyed, that male attention when people saw her in her swimsuit, and she shouldn't, allow a few guys hitting on her, and her enjoyment about that to get in the way of what she had with Dennis. So she's feeling guilty for no reason at all. The mom is saying, listen, boys and girls fight, and that's something that isn't new. And however, Sue is seeking emotional security, and she's doing this through food. So she goes to the soda shop, and she orders a double chocolate sundae, and because Dennis isn't there, what the hell? I might as well enjoy life. So anyway, before she gets 1 tablespoon of that chocolate sundae, she stopped, and it turns out to be Dennis. And Dennis is an abuser who wants to frame his abuse as a positive. So what he's doing is basically telling Sue, listen, I'm still angry at you, but I know how being fat makes you so unhappy. And of course, you're so unhappy because I'm the one making you miserable about being fat. And to make sure that you don't get, quote, fat again, I'm going to forgive you and I'm going to come back into your life, so I can micromanage what you eat and how you weigh. Now here's where Dennis really lays on the psychological abuse, because he says, "I'm the only guy in town who cared about you when you were built like a tank." And yeah, he's trying to destroy her self-worth, saying, "Listen, you know, those other guys, they're just objectifying you. But when you were a big fat tank, none of those guys were around but me. So you need me in your life." Sue, unfortunately, is psychologically damaged. She falls for this. And then, yeah, there are a couple, unfortunately. And I truly hope this couple doesn't make it. Sue's a nice girl. She's nicely drawn. But she's just the victim of emotional abuse from this creep Dennis. So anyway, that's the end of the story. Other than saying, once again, this artwork is so beautiful. So anyway, that is my review of For Lovers Only, issue number 80. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.